我哋夠法定人數。
Members will form the quorum and it's also the appointed time. May I call the meeting to order? First, can I invite members to confirm the minutes of the meeting dated the 11th of April 2014? The Secretariat has not received any proposals for amendment. Can we confirm the minutes, please? Thank you. Since the last meeting, we've received one paper. Please refer to the agenda. And then agenda item number 3, Mr. Yik. Speaker is off mic. We add this to our list of outstanding items. That is about Uber. They operate like luxury taxis, and they have dealt a very heavy blow to the taxi trade. So I hope that we can have a discussion of this item as soon as possible. Yes, let's put it on our list of outstanding issues, because this is the last meeting of this legislative year. And we don't have an agenda item on the items to be discussed at the next meeting. So we can just put it on the list of outstanding issues, and then when the next legislative year starts, we can then decide when to discuss it. Okay, the next item, illegal carriage of passengers for hire or reward by light goods vehicles. All right, members have put up their hands already. Meanwhile, I believe members have received submissions from both sides, i.e. those who are sympathetic to the carriage of passengers by LGCs and those against. We can ask the administration later. We welcome government officials to the meeting. We have the Undersecretary as well as colleagues from the Transport Department. Undersecretary, can you please walk us through the paper? Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to outline our paper on illegal carriage of passengers for hire or reward by some LGVs, and also enforcement action taken by the administration. Under the Road Traffic Ordinance, the role of goods vehicles is to provide service for the carriage of goods. Anyone who carry goods for hire or reward with a licensed LVG, or anyone who solicit or attempt to solicit any person for hire or reward to traffic in an LGV is an offense. So in other words, it is illegal. It's against the law for an LGV to carry passengers for hire or reward. The police will take enforcement action under the relevant bylaw or regulations, and will take action upon receipt of complaints and take appropriate action. In recent years, the administration have mounted a number of decoy operations to combat this kind of illegal activities. And the police are also investigated into reported cases of legal activities, such as the carriage of goods other than personal effects by some taxis for hire or reward. And the police will continue to monitor the situation and take appropriate enforcement action when necessary. To facilitate the public and the trade to fully understand the permitted services of LGVs, the Transport Department and the police have launched publicity and education activities through various channels. And passengers are reminded that they may not have the necessary protection if they use LPG, since the third-party insurance covering the vehicle may not be involved. It may not be valid in the circumstances. We also remind mobile phone application software companies of this fact. We welcome questions from members. Thank you. 4 members have put up their hands: Wong Kwok Hing, Pan Xiaoping, Lee Chuk Yan, and Leung Kwok Hong. Any more? Yik Chi Ming and Gary Fan. All right, 4 minutes each. Ms. Wong Kwok Hing, Chairman. For LGVs, there are gray areas in the carriage of goods and passengers by them. As a result, we've seen LGVs carrying passengers to the airport. Because the definition of goods is not clear. Is it luggage or goods? I think the administration should clarify the definition. Otherwise, both passengers and drivers and also whether LGVs should be allowed into the airport area have been is rather unclear. So there should be a clearer definition as to whether the goods carried by LGV into the airport is luggage or goods. And then for third-party insurance of LGVs, they do not provide coverage to passengers should there be an accident. I'm sure the public will be concerned about this. Can the administration step up public education on this point? Otherwise, the general public are not aware of this, and passengers may not know that they are not covered by the third-party insurance of the LGV concerned. Perhaps there is little publicity of this fact, and members of the public are not aware. And have we had accidents in the past where passengers were not covered by the third-party insurance of the vehicle concerned, and as a result, suffering loss? Under Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your questions. The RTO has clearly set out that LGVs can be used for carrying goods, and goods includes burden of any description, whether it is legal or not. Doesn't hinge on the type or amount of goods carried, but rather whether the carriage of goods is for hire or reward. So even if we amend the definition for goods, we won't be able to tackle the crux of the matter. And we believe that only a small portion of the LPGs in the market are doing this. Step-up enforcement will be a solution. Now, if we are to amend the definition for goods, there are challenges because the size, the bulk, the volume, and of goods cannot really be defined in an easy manner. So it would be difficult to create across the board definition for goods. But according to court cases, the court will take into account a number of factors in deciding whether an LGV is carrying goods for hire or reward. What about third-party insurance? Please be brief. Regarding figures, I'll see whether the Transport Department can supplement. What about insurance coverage? Yes, we'll step up publicity on the lack of insurance coverage. In other words, when there is an accident involving a passenger of an LGV which is not carrying goods, there is no insurance coverage. Now, if there is no goods, there is no insurance coverage. What if there is goods as well? You have to sort this out. This is a critical issue. If the LVG is carrying passengers for hire or reward, then this is against the law, and therefore the insurance will no longer be valid. Statistics. Mr. Pan Xiuping. I share Mr. Wong Kwok Hing's concern. According to the paper, passengers using such illegal transport service may not have the necessary protection, since the third-party insurance covering the vehicle involved may be invalid in the circumstances. You know, people like to keep pets nowadays, and some people ask if they bring along their pets on an LGV, is it true that there will be no insurance coverage should there be an accident? Has there been any enforcement cases? And then in between March and April this year, you arrested 9 LGV drivers through decoy operations. Other than decoy operations, do you have other means to enforce the law? Regarding education, you mentioned that various channels will be used. Can you tell us what are the channels? How can you ensure that the public can get this message? Because this is indeed a gray area. It's hard for the public to know whether they have violated the law. You really have to let the public know about the insurance issue. Under Secretary, for enforcement figures, as we can see, in between March and April this year, the police have taken a number of operations. 9 LGV drivers have been arrested for the offense, that is carrying passengers for hire or reward, and the court has dealt with 6 cases. And these drivers are penalized, and because they do not have any valid third-party insurance, these drivers were also penalized for that. Now, if a passenger is being carried for hire or reward, that means the passenger is not covered by any third-party insurance, and the driver will be punished. Can you tell us whether a pet is regarded as goods? And the police is using decoy operations to enforce the law, and how can you make your public education more effective? All right, first about pets, and then education and publicity. I invite the Transport Department to supplement. Mr. Strip.
The means by which we carry out enforcement action, and the undercover operations are perceived to be the best way to tackle the problem. We only initiated this as a result of the fact that it was quite blatantly advertised, and it was available, highlighted in the newspaper coverage. Once we'd achieved our objectives of getting the message through, and we made a lot of publicity associated with the arrests, we are satisfied that there was a learning experience, and that the trade are no longer carrying out such blatant infringements of carrying passengers.
What about pets? Pets regarded as goods?
Yes, I think pets would be classified as goods.
Any other follow-up? Mr. Lee, check in. Well, there seems to be some conflicts between commercial vehicles. This is not really necessary, because I'm sure there are bad apples in all trades. For instance, for taxis, some of them carry goods offering a 20% discount, and there are 80,000 LGV licenses, and it is natural that there are bad apples.
自己覺得即係個問題。
I don't think the problem is that serious. So please do not inflate the conflict. I think all parties concerned have been in harmony. As for the police, I'm a bit dissatisfied because I received complaints about their undercover operations. How did they go about those operations? For destination B, they were told the LGV driver that he should drive from site A to site B to get some goods, but then goods are not found at site B, and the driver was asked to go to site C. For a normal person, for the driver as a normal person, that's a rather excessive undercover operation that is overdone. Well, say it's not goods. I have a backpack, say. Well, in a moment, I have to ask the police whether a backpack would be considered goods. All right, this person with a backpack gets onto an LGV and asks the driver to go to B at normal price, or even without a backpack, you get onto the LGV with a green bag. So how will you treat that sort of articles? Because without a piece of goods of big size, how will you handle the driver? Well, I was telling you a real case. That is, the driver was told to go from A to B, but there are no goods at B, and the driver was asked to go to C. Now, they're midway along the route already. Well, I'd like to know from the police whether this sort of undercover operations are really excessive. The police, the transport department must communicate with the trade members. For such conflicts, I believe the best solution is to have communication and sort things out. For example, what the definitions are, what the details are, and so forth, such that they know what the law is saying. The drivers don't want to breach the law. They just want to earn a livelihood. Can the Transport Bureau and the Transport Department and the police hold more meetings with the trade members to have more communication? Under Secretary, what about enhanced communication? For enhanced communication, recently trade members have been offering certain views to us, so the Transport Department and the police did communicate with them. I agree with Mr. Lee Chak-yan that there are bound to be black sheep. So the crux of the matter is law enforcement. Maybe the police can supplement in a moment. I think the police was overreacting. What about a backpack? Is that a piece of goods? Well, I think the undercover operations are excessive. Mr. Strip?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to counter this allegation. We noted that there was a suggestion in one of the newspapers that there had been some underhand method by which we had carried out our undercover operations. I'm assured that this was not the case. We made every effort to ensure that our officers had no luggage whatsoever, so that there was no reason why the LGV should be carrying an individual with no luggage. Similarly, they would not have indicated to the driver that they were seeking to collect luggage. The cases are gone through the courts, and there was no indication in the court appearances that there was anything underhand in the way in which our undercover operations were conducted.
Well, after all, many people in Hong Kong don't have jobs, so they have to serve as drivers. The market is not good enough, honestly speaking. In the past, we had these taxi drivers who offered a 20% discount, and they're eliminating the normal drivers, and you're unable to address that issue. Now, I think these LGVs are just like those private vehicles that took passengers illegally in the past. all along I've been telling drivers that there's no way out. They're in a dilemma. I've never seen so many people resorting to the driving trade for a livelihood. Well, very often people just drive on Saturdays only. So this is a structural problem with our job market. Many drivers are now desperate. Even if they have a job, they don't have enough business. You're unable to regulate anything. You're unable to regulate those drivers who offered a 20% discount. We go round and round without solving the problem. The operational cost is too high for taxi drivers. This is true. Mr. Yao Xingmu, tell me whether there's any city with the license price several dozens folds higher than the price of the vehicle itself. So we councillors are in difficulty. When the van drivers came to fetch us, I said I'll support them. And when the taxi drivers who offered 20% discounts came to us, there's nothing we can do. Mr. Frankie Yik mentioned passengers on LGVs. Well, those vehicles are to be used by the consumers. They can take on passengers. It's just that they cannot receive a fee. Well, you cannot restrict goods vehicles to have just 2 seats only. So we're all caught in this dilemma. Well, our councillors want to canvass votes, because if you say you don't support them, you don't get their votes. So we're going round and round without getting anywhere. Mr. Yao Xingmu, let me ask you a simple question. Can you suppress the taxi license price? When taxi license price drops, then the difficulty can be alleviated. If taxi drivers can earn a livelihood through normal means, they don't need to offer a 20% discount. If LGVs can have enough goods to carry, they won't carry passengers. It's because now in Hong Kong there are not enough goods to carry, so they carry passengers for a livelihood. Well, the onus of proof is too difficult to fulfill. It's very difficult to have proof. Well, if I say the passenger is my friend, what can you do? Well, Mr. Li Yan mentioned certain cases. Well, maybe undercover operations, the unscrupulous elements were not caught. Rather, it's the good citizens who get caught. Do you have any member from the police? We have a chief superintendent here. Well, let me remind you not to do that. You are perverting justice. Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, some members mentioned that illegal carriage of passengers offers no protection to the passengers, and it has something to do with the taxi license prices. Insurance premiums are high, license prices are high. However, ordinary members of the public cannot differentiate these illegal carriage of passengers with other LGVs. Well, in your paper, you call them all light goods vehicles. In the brief from the Electoral Secretariat, they give it another name in Chinese. So no consistency between the English and Chinese versions. Some LGVs are now very beautiful. Originally, there's no window at the back of the vehicle, and now they put on a false window. So from their appearance, you don't know whether it's a goods vehicle. If you get a goods vehicle, you must obtain a business registration, and then on the outside of the car, you must paint certain particulars. You still have a 2-tier regime. this so-called white plate vehicle and black plate vehicle, so to speak. Oh yes, these light goods vehicles carry goods normally, but at times you can carry your friends and relatives for leisure. If I'm applying for business vehicle license, I pay less license fees, but I can carry my friends and relatives. That's rather interesting. As for the appearance of these vehicles, recently I saw these vehicles for persons with disabilities that got labels on them. That's quite good. This is to facilitate the public to differentiate whether a vehicle should be carrying passengers or goods. Well, in a moment, I'm going to move a motion for the administration's consideration. The Undersecretary mentioned penalty in the 6 cases. Apart from fines, what other penalty would there be? Undersecretary, apart from fines, what other punishment? Well, for labels on vehicles, the Transport Department and the Transport Trade are discussing this to see whether we can have some indication or differentiation device by way of labels. Now, we're following up on this. As for punishment, as I said just now, at the moment, the crucial point is not what type of goods the LGV is carrying. That's not the crucial point of prosecution. That the crucial point is whether it's illegal carriage of passengers for hire or reward. I understand that point. For those 6 cases, apart from fining, what other punishment would be available? Imprisonment? Well, apart from fines, we can also suspend the license, ranging from 9 months to a year. To an operator, this is a heavy punishment. On top of that, there were cases in which imprisonment was handed down by the court. Well, through appropriate avenues, did you inform the relevant organizations that they should understand the law and shouldn't breach it? Well, through the Transport Department and through penalty handed down by the court, the message had been passed on to them. Well, we perhaps should make the message even clearer. Mr. Gary Fan, I'd like to ask questions not asked by our colleagues just now. I don't see anything substantial in the paper for solving this problem of illegal carriage of passengers for hire or reward by LGVs. You said you will do publicity, education, and law enforcement better. Well, tell me more about publicity and education. In society, concerns had been raised about such behavior, as mentioned by paragraph 9 in your paper. Noting the increasing use of mobile phone application software for hiring services or LGVs is a lot more convenient now to hire LGVs. In the past, it might take me 10 odd minutes to get one. Now, it only takes me 2 to 3 minutes to get one. Now, these LGVs did receive a reward. Now, in paragraph 9, you say you remind application software companies of the legal requirements. In future, will you consider that without hampering business freedom, there should be some reasonable regulation? For example, in the course of prosecution, the government, the police, and the court, when spotting such illegal carriage of passengers and after the arrest of the drivers, would the operators also be held liable, maybe by way of a fine? You said that 6 drivers had been convicted in court. In those cases, were mobile phone application software involved? Did those software play a role in those cases? As for Mr. Frankie Yick's motion, I think I'll support points 1, 2, and 4, I'll consider supporting those 3 points. But for the proposed reduction of seats, I have reservation. That's not going to facilitate the public. Rather, it will inconvenience the public. For LGVs, they usually have 3 seats. One is for a worker to help the driver to carry the goods, etc. Who will answer these questions? Undersecretary? Concerning technological advancement, members of the public and trade members use more and more these software applications to facilitate their operations. We did note this trend. Well, if these applications are used in vehicles on hire, they have to follow the relevant statutory requirements. With the breach of law, there will be punishment like the imposition of a fine, imprisonment, or suspension of licenses. We did pay attention to the mobile phone application software in the market. Sometimes the situation is ambiguous. Together with the police, we're investigating into certain cases and seeking legal advice. So we did note the situation. So for the time being, there are no precedents in our courts. And for those 6 cases, those 6 drivers convicted, no operators had been held liable, and application software was not involved. Well, I'll defer to the police for more details. For those 6 cases convicted in court, were apps involved? Any supplement from the police?
Use of. However, it must be understood that the majority of users of these applications are legitimate, and therefore it is unlikely that we will be able to secure the evidence to support a prosecution against the operator of the application.
鄧家彪議員。
多謝主席。事實上，即係
Mr. Tan Ka-ki. Well, I think the crux of the matter is that we should abide by the law. Both the operators and the law enforcers should abide by the law.
行嘅意。
I'd like to ask a question asked previously. Have there been accidents in the past when an LGV had an accident and the passenger was not protected because of that? And I'd like to ask about the history of development. Now, on a maximum 5 seats are allowed on LGVs, but the structure of LGV is different from that of taxi, and I think it is easier to modify the seating arrangement of LGV. Now, is that a trend that more and more LGVs of 5 seats are important in Hong Kong? Has it always been that LGVs can have 5 seats? How come when legislation was introduced there was such a loophole? Chairman, regarding statistics, Mr. Tang asked very specifically about traffic accidents and whether third-party insurance was invalid in LGVs. We have to check the statistics and provide an information paper afterwards. And as for the trend, can I ask the Transport Department to supplement? Yes, I would like to clarify the following. First, LGVs under the law covers those that are logistics vehicles carrying goods lower than 5.5 tons. While we are talking about light good vehicles, there are goods vehicles that are slightly bigger. So how come the number of seats can range from 2 to 5, excluding the driver? Because in the past, we needed logistics vehicles for the transportation of labor-intensive trades. So in the past, workers were carried by such vehicles to work sites. Now, if we look at our statistics, there are LGVs with 2, 3, 4, 5 seats. So there are historical and economic reasons behind this trend. So you mean there are goods used by fruits and vehicles, fruits and vegetables trade, and some for, say, moving vans. They need seats for movers, right? LGV is a commercial operation. Depending on the trade and also the needs of the trade, the owner can choose the right number of seats for its LGV. So you can buy an LGV with 2 to 4 seats. Since you have given us a rough analysis, can you give us an information paper with a breakdown of the number of vehicles with different numbers of seats? Do you have any trend? Okay, detailed figures can be supplied after the meeting. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, we have more and more such LGVs carrying passengers, and they do not solicit passengers just on the road. Some give out cards, and some have advertisements with the numbers to solicit business. The government admits that this is against the law, but you don't have a good way of handling the problem. Some members asked whether you should change the Chinese name to make it tally with the English name. When we were kids, at least when I was a kid, there was so-called a white plate license and red plate license. The red plate licensed vehicles are those that can carry passengers. I'll have to discuss history. We do not have these so-called red-plated vehicles anymore. We only have licensed taxis, minibuses. Since we could do that in the past, and it was also illegal to operate as white-plated vehicles, I think the government can do the same now, so that you can have a solution to address this problem, illegal carriage of passengers by some LGVs. And before that, we should not allow them to travel on our roads to solicit business and to take passengers to the airport. What can the transport department or the police do to at least control the situation? It is very common in our airport. They have taken away business from taxis and minibuses. So do you have any decoy operations? If yes, I don't think you have done enough. Perhaps you should have more frequent decoy operations. What more can you do to minimize such illegal activities? I asked the police and also the transport department to supplement, respectively. Enforcement, please.
Yes, with respect to the airport, I understand that there is a number of restrictions that were placed upon the operation of the LGVs operating around the airport area, particularly with respect to their parking facilities and where they could load and unload. And this has had a significantly positive impact in terms of the use of LGVs for the carriage of passengers. I don't have any current statistics on the enforcement of that area.
蘇生有冇咩補充？
主席就話林議
Mr. Jeffrey Lam asked whether we can have different markings on different types of vehicles. From a publicity and education point of view, we're discussing with different trades to see whether some markings or labels can be put on the body of vehicles to let people understand that this is a vehicle which can legally carry goods for hire or reward. We'll continue to discuss with the trade. And as mentioned by the police, in the airport, the operation of LGVs at the airport has been subject to very strict restrictions at the airport since 2007, such as the number of loading and unloading bays and also the parking facilities. There are a lot of restrictions. Since 2007, when the restrictions were put in place, there is no more fighting for business between the two trades at the airport. And take taxis as an example. They can directly drop off passengers at the departure hall, outside the departure hall. For other vehicles, they're not allowed to do so. So we believe the regulations or the regulatory measures are effective. Mr. Albert Chen, I have the feeling that a few poor relatives are fighting between themselves. There is that big brother who is obese. This is the MTR. The MTRCL has dominated the market, making tens of billions of dollars in revenue per year. And for the other younger brothers, taxis, minibuses, LGVs, and coach service for residential developments, they are fighting for the rest of the market. And they are bickering among themselves. And yet, MTRCL has dominated the market. Last year, it made a profit of $20 or $30 billion. If they are willing to release part of its profit to the other transport operators, then I'm sure all the other modes of public transport will be happy because of economic transformation or a reduction in IVS visitors. Now, the mode of public transport that can influence the powerful and privileged can then bully the other modes of public transport. For taxis, of course, they are more influential. For LGVs, they are the most vulnerable, comparatively speaking. They are not as well organized as the taxi trade, and most of them are individual operators, and the market niche is also smaller. So a poor relative, so-called, who has the backup of the powerful, is now trying to bully other poor relatives. If there is any motion or proposal to cut down on the number of seats in LGVs, I will oppose. Well, I sometimes use these LGVs when we have an operation or an activity. We need an LGV to help us to carry the sound system and other equipment to the place of activity. And of course, the rich and the powerful don't need such services. Please do not crack down on the underprivileged. So you receive a few complaints and you want to suppress the LGVs in a high-handed manner. And I think you are harming the innocent. So, members, please do understand the crux of the matter. I am going to oppose the motion to be moved soon. You have to do things with justifications. If there are illegal cases, you tackle them. And you should not inadvertently catch those who genuinely need the service of LGVs. This is blind, and you have no idea of public administration at all. I hope there can be a brief response from the administration as to the proposal to cut the number of seats in LGVs, because I'm certainly going to oppose this. Under Secretary, regarding the cutting of number of seats, as I said, the crux of the matter is whether LGVs are carrying passengers illegally for reward or hire. Now, if they are not really doing it for hire or reward, that is okay. If they're carrying their family members, that's okay.
Whether it's a poor relative or the big brother, we always have scenarios where people are not in their original trade. So if you don't want LGVs to illegally carry passengers for hire or reward, then at the same time we should act on the property tycoons as well. Then there won't be so many problems. At the same time, we should face a certain problem squarely. We always say that we're short of manpower, but many locals don't want to be involved in very hard work. They want to be small businessmen. So there are reasons behind that. The atmosphere in society is that many people advocate that we don't need to abide by the law. Even when there are laws, we don't need to follow them. We can attack those with authority and so forth. So law enforcement has become difficult. Now look at the statistics. The police mentioned figures in paragraph 5. In March and April, 9 LGV drivers were arrested and 6 had been convicted. Initially, a fine of $5,000 and 3-month imprisonment, and then maximum $10,000 and 6-month imprisonment for a second or subsequent conviction. So I think we should try to make those rich and poor to be in their normal business again. Please, do you have sufficient manpower for law enforcement?
We do have to apportion our manpower in accordance with our priorities. So in this instance, we did concentrate some additional resources to tackle the LGV illegal activities. Once we had achieved that objective, as far as I'm concerned, we can stop operations until there's a resurgence. And at the moment, we believe that that has been resolved.
What I'm interested to know, operation carried on in March or April this year. What about the last 12 months or 24 months? What happened?
Yes, we have no prosecution figures prior to this operation. This operation was instigated as a result of a raising of the publicity of this in the newspapers and the fact that the applications becoming more prevalent and the use of the technology was more prevalent. There was a tendency as a result of this technology for the LGVs to blatantly abuse the law, which meant that we had to take action. And again, once we publicised that fact, I think the message got through to the trade and it has been resolved to a great extent.
Are you saying that the operation carried out in March or April this year was the only operation that you carried out in regard of the unlawful use of the LGV?
Other than those that were carried out a number of years ago during the airport operations, yeah, this is the most recent one. As a result.
What about the penalties?
Sorry,
out of those convictions?
They ranged, as I say, between about a fine of $800 for carrying passengers to a fine of $2,000, disqualification for 12 months for driving without third-party insurance, and suspended sentences.
Would you agree that the penalty is on the low side?
It's not for me to comment.
But would you, if you have to comment, would you?
We are satisfied that the third-party risk penalties are quite severe, and therefore the courts are dealing with this appropriately.
And there was no imprisonment?
There were suspended imprisonment terms.
Only one case, right? Or
2 cases, I believe.
2 cases, yeah. Right. Thank you.
Last speaker, Dr. KWOK Ka-ki. We still have 2 more agenda items. Dr. KWOK Ka-ki. Mr. Chairman, this LGV issue depends very heavily on the attitude of the government. In society, there's a huge demand for LGVs in terms of transport needs. Well, even for us councillors, when we serve the community, we also need such modes of transport to transport articles needed by certain activities to different districts. And many people rely on these LGVs as the most important mode of transport. Well, in law, we can have a very stringent approach. The question is, you may suffocate these trade members, quite many of them. In society, they don't have much bargaining power. We all know that they have difficulties in seeking other jobs, and for an easier livelihood, they have this license to sustain quite many people. And to enterprises, including SMEs, such LGVs are important. It really depends on the policy, inclination, and the attitude of the police. You can kill, so to speak, all of them, or you can kill 8 out of 10 of them. But the problem is you force even more people to take to the streets. You force more people to adopt a hostile attitude towards the government. Now, the paper mentions undercover operations. I'm more concerned about undercover operations. In law, such operations are controversial. You consider certain behavior illegal. They're not regular activities. You should not push these people to illegal acts. For the police, did you make clear to the DOJ your responsibility? If a driver prosecuted by you sues you to the effect that your operations are not normal or illegal. And then I have a question for the Undersecretary. To what extent would you like to deal with these LGVs? As for the motion, I partly agree to it. But as for seats, number of seats, you're creating more difficulty for the users of these LGVs. Sometimes, in order to carry goods, they need more than 2 seats. So the motion in this regard is impracticable and unreasonable. Undersecretary, perhaps I should first say something about attitude. I think we can affirm and admit that these LGVs, in terms of the economy of Hong Kong and the transport market, play a very important role. We don't want to kill, in the honourable member's words, these drivers. But the most important point is that they have to abide by the law in their operations. If they breach the law, then of course the police and the transport department will enforce the law. For law enforcement, I'll defer to the police in a moment. We agree that law enforcement is a very important message for the market on what the attitude of the government is. I think the Undersecretary has addressed the point on the behavior of these drivers. You should not elicit these drivers to resort to illegal means. Well, lawful operations have no problem. Well, sorry, colleagues, I have 2 more agenda items to handle, so no second round for questions. Mr. Frankie Yik and Mr. Tony Tse have submitted a motion. And just now, he told me that he would withdraw point 3 from his motion. Mr. Frankie Yik, would you please explain your motion? Well, as the officials explain, LGVs cover vehicles under 5.5 tons, not the vans that we normally refer to. So, in actual circumstances and in terms of categorization, after talking to Mr. Tony Tse, we agreed to withdraw point 3 of our motion, just retaining points 1, 2, and 4. Number 4 will become number 3. And through the Transport Department, I've distributed this to you. Now, I saw this on the street, a vehicle for PWDs. They stuck a label to the vehicle so that people can differentiate whether it's a passenger vehicle or a goods vehicle. That's not provided by the Transport Department. Mr. Li Xiaoyan, I'd like to seek a clarification. Well, what about this Chinese version, Hak For Te? Where do we see it? So you want the Transport Department to change the name in their documents? Well, just now, the colleagues from the Transport Department said that those under 5.5 tons are LGVs. They're different from what we call them in the market. But in law or in formal documents, do we have this Chinese term, Hak For Te? No, in the English version, they're all called light goods vehicles. Nothing like Hak For Te. So it should be translated as Heng Ying For Te in the Chinese version, if it is to be transliteration. In English, it's light goods vehicles. In Chinese, we do use Hak For Te. But in society, Hak For Te is very commonly used. So even if we are to change the law and change to another name, the difference won't be that big because in society, people always use that common name. It's not very effective to change the formal name. Now, in hand, I have this motion from Mr. Frankie Yik. So no more discussion, all right? I have 2 more agenda items to handle. So I'll put this to the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please raise their hands. 5. Those against, please raise their hands. 3. I think the motion is carried. All right, so much for this item. Let's proceed to the next item on the agenda. Let's invite the government officials to come in. We welcome the Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Ivy Law, the Principal Assistant Secretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Cordelia Lam, and also the Chief Superintendent of Police, Mr. Paul Strip. Ms. Ivy Law, if you are ready, please introduce the paper to us. Today we're to report to members the latest progress of combating drink and driving. Drink driving can bring about serious consequences not only to a motorist but also to all road users. To deter such inappropriate driving behavior, the government has over the years tightened up the control over and raised the penalties of drink driving by introducing legislative amendments to the Road Traffic Ordinance with a 3-tier penalty system and empower the police to request drivers to take breath tests. Since its implementation in 2009, the number of rated vehicles and drivers arrested dropped by 66% and 36%. For drug driving, drug abuse will hamper the driving ability of drivers and pose road safety hazards. To target both, we amended the Road Traffic Ordinance to adopt a zero-tolerance approach on 6 drugs. And we also empower the police to request the motorists to receive preliminary drug tests. Ever since the zero-tolerance approach was adopted in March 2013, the police conducted a total of about 270 drug driving tests up to the end of 2013. And the number of drug driving-related traffic accidents dropped from 17 to 7 from 2012 to 2013. The number of persons arrested for drug driving offences dropped by 33%. The police and the Transport Department have been collaborating with the Road Safety Council to start publicity and education through various means to enhance awareness of drink driving and drug driving and their hazards to society, particularly during festivals. Comments on the paper are welcome.
Wong Kwok-hing, Tan Ka-ki, Gary Fan, Pan Xiaoping have put up their hands. 4 minutes each. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Thank you, Chairman. The audit report criticized the random breath test, saying that at night when the risks are higher, they are not done, and it's only done or administered at daytime. What is the administration's response? Can RBT be administered at night when the risk is highest? And the first mobile breath test center, well, there is only one police vehicle doing that. Hong Kong is so big. Will there be a timetable for procuring or for setting up more mobile breath test center? I think we should have at least one in Hong Kong, Kowloon, and NT respectively. That is the minimum requirement. Ms. Law, thank you. The Audit Commission said that at night time the police should conduct more mobile breath tests. The police understand this. Daytime, the roads are more busy. Daytime, there are also speeding and traffic accidents, and therefore more policemen have to be deployed for this. And nighttime, there is less manpower, and the police will see whether they can do it by means of manpower deployment. When can we expect some result? Regarding a mobile breath test center, the police plan to buy more 3 police vehicles for that purpose. Well, I'm pleased to hear that you have the plan to buy more police vehicles, and first you're willing to do that. Can we be given a time frame for these? May I ask the police to supplement? Mr. Strip.
I'd like to say that we are carrying out approximately 60% of our random breath testing during night time. So despite the criticisms within the PAC report and our limitations on our manpower, we are carrying out the majority of our random breath tests at night time. With respect to the mobile breath test centres, yes, we've recently applied for funding for the additional 3 vehicles, and subject to the funding becoming available, we'll be having those deployed as soon as possible.
Okay.
Well, when are you going to do that? We will always support your funding bid. When are you going to submit a funding bid?
I'm very pleased to hear that you'll support our funding bid, and then that would suggest that we should be able to get them within 18 months, 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Tan Ka-ki. Well, the World Cup is now finished. During the World Cup, we're very concerned about drink driving. Was the situation more serious during the World Cup? Can you tell us the number of accidents and also the number of tests conducted? Drug driving, it used to be very scary a few years ago, but in the recent couple of years, there have been less drug driving, and we feel that the law is effective. Is our impression true? Thank you. During the World Cup, the number of drink driving were 823 RBT were done during the World Cup period, and 14,000 odd drivers were intercepted, and 52,000 were arrested for drink driving. There's no obvious increase in numbers compared to previous years. And during the World Cup, there were over 200 operations at clubs and bars to publicize against drink driving. And for drug driving, we are pleased that since we have had that new piece of legislation, the number of drug driving cases has dropped. So I think enforcement and publicity have been effective. What about during the World Cup? Were there traffic accidents because of drink driving? There certainly was, because 52 persons were arrested. 52 persons were arrested. But were they involved in accidents? Mr. Strip.
As a result of our operations, so random breath test operations, we had 52 arrests in June. I haven't got the figures for July. We had 51 in the same period of 2013, so there wasn't a significant increase despite the World Cup.
How about the accidents, the number of...
I regretfully don't have those figures, I'm afraid.
好，范國委員。
Mr. Gary Fan. Well, Para 5 of Annex E as well the rapid oral fluid test, and it is said that the cost is higher, and therefore the ROFT will not be applied lightly. And according to the paper, the cost per test is $100 to $400. Well, if it is not frequently used, then perhaps frontline police officers may be concerned whether the ROFT should be applied because of the high cost, and if the prosecution or the conviction rate is low, they may feel pressurized. I want to know whether there are clear guidelines for frontline police officers. If ROFT is effective, can the police or the administration not to consider its cost but use it more commonly? I'll have a go first, and the police will supplement. Police officers can require drivers to carry one or more of the 3 tests available. For ROFT, it is but one of the 3. We do not have the appropriate apparatus or equipment for ROFT, so it is not being used yet. The relevant provision has not yet commenced. Now, we mainly employ 2 casts. First, according to Annex E, it is observation of the that is a drug influence recognition observation, and then urine or blood sample may be taken to confirm whether drug has been taken. So there are very clear guidelines for our frontline officers to check whether there's been drug driving. Sorry. How come the cost has such a big range in between $100 and $400? Well, this is what we have got. According to samples, I think as technology advances, the unit cost would drop. Mr. Strip.
Cost is because we have still yet to decide on the type of device to be used for the saliva test. We are currently carrying out tests on 2 systems, and they vary in price for $100 to $400 per unit.
OK， 潘兆平議員。
Mr. Pan. Thank you. Annex C has got the enforcement figures of drink driving. In between 2008 and 2013, we have seen a rising trend from 212 to 223 from 2010 to 2013. So while you have already conducted a lot of publicity, I'd like to know whether it is because we haven't got enough publicity resulting in this rising trend in the number of accidents involving drink driving. And F, a number of impairment tests conducted. Well, in 2012, there were 32, and 2013, 20. And of course, for the figures for 2012 started in March. I'd like to know the reason for that reduction in number of impairment tests conducted. Yes, we note that in 2013 there is a slight increase in the number of traffic accidents involving drink driving. We've stepped up publicity and education, and the police plans to procure more mobile breath test centers to crack down on this, and we will closely monitor the situation. As regard the number of impairment tests, can I ask Mr. Strip to supplement?
On the number of tests or the accidents involving drink driving, you'll notice that 2011 there was a slight drop, so the increase has only been noticed in 2012 and 2013. This is a relatively small increase compared to the significant drop that occurred in 2008. So we're not too sure that this is an indication of the trend. However, as you can see, we've had a quadrupling in the number of random breath tests, and we will continue to stress the importance of carrying out random breath tests. With respect to the impairment testing, you will notice that the number of drug drivers involved in accidents has also seen a significant reduction. We believe that there has been a very positive impact to the legislation. As a result of the legislation, there has been a significant reduction, as we see it, in the number of drug drivers. So that has had a very positive impact. And also the number of impairment tests has been affected by individuals who have decided that they require medical treatment prior to carrying out the impairment test. And then we would carry out a blood test rather than the impairment test.
主席就即係我對嗰個整體嘅措施冇乜大意見啦，即係你加。
Ms. Albertchen, now we have no strong views about the police action here. We'll of course support you. Now you have this three-tier system. I have strong views about this. The three-tier penalty system: first offense, suspension of license for 6 months, and subsequent suspension of 2 years, and the third time suspension of license for 5 years. But for those who are rich, it will affect them. Well, even if you suspend his license, he can always employ the service of a chauffeur. Well, in Scandinavian countries, there is immediate imprisonment regardless of the status and also the wealth of the offender. Now, even Li Ka-shing can be imprisoned, and he will be intimidated. And for professional driver, he will also be imprisoned, and he will feel the same deterrent effect. But for suspension of the license, a rich man has no fear for that. For the rich for the rich, they don't care. They can apply for another license and drive outside Hong Kong. Those who are rich, well, they have villas, residential properties all over the world, and they can always drive elsewhere. So really, to crack down on drink driving and drug driving, you must amend the penalties. Well, there can be immediate detention for 24 hours, 48 hours, and second conviction, imprisonment for 1 month, 2 months, to make your law more effective. So you must review your legislation and follow the examples of Scandinavian countries. And there, the fine on speeding is calculated on the basis of your monthly income. Say if you earn $1 billion per day, then per month, that means that you can be fined $10 million for speeding. So the fine is proportional to your income. And if for drink driving, the penalty is imprisonment, I'm sure it will be more effective. I'd like to know whether Mr. Strip would care to comment on this. I think it's a matter of policy. Well, there is already imprisonment an imprisonment term in drink driving up to 3 years, whether it is the first, or second, or third tier, and the court has sufficient power to ask for immediate imprisonment, depending on the circumstances of the case, and at most a person can be jailed for 3 years.
Give me information on recent imprisonment cases. It's normally when a person is killed, somebody is killed, that there'll be imprisonment. That is for serious traffic accident leading to fatalities. Normally it will be a suspension of the license only. As I said, to the tycoons, to the wealthy people, suspension of license is meaningless. Of course, for serious cases, you defer to the court for a final judgment. As I commented, to the rich, these very light penalty won't have any deterrent effect. All right, the honourable member's view is clear. Please think about that. Mr. Frankie Yik, of course, for drink driving or drug driving, we understand that they pose hazards to human life, so we'd like the police to enforce the law strictly and stringently. We will see that the measures have been effective. For C, I don't quite understand about drink driving. From 2008 to 2013, traffic accidents due to drink driving have obviously dropped. The number of persons arrested also dropped. But if you look at the last row, for the number of drivers arrested at the random breath test, the figures did not quite change. How should we construe these figures? Mr. Strip?
Found that there's been a reduction in our hit rate, as we call it, in terms of the number of random breath tests and the arrests that we result out of those random breath tests. However, because of the significant increase in the number of random breath tests that we've been carrying out, we've been maintaining almost a steady number of arrests through the random breath test. The reduction in the numbers of persons arrested for drink driving as a total is obviously affected by the fact that there are less involved in traffic offences and traffic accidents. So we are arresting more people before they get into an accident through the random breath test, which is a good thing. And also our hit rate through the random breath test is reducing, which suggests that there are fewer people now drinking and driving.
主席，清楚明白，因為原來呢一行要同上。
All right, clearly understood. So we should take both both rows at the same time. So as you mentioned, the hit rate, and I understand why the overall situation has hugely improved. Concerning Mr. Albert Chan's point about punishment, it's not just punishment. Traffic and transport-related taxis, be they with red plates or black plates, so to speak, the court always handed down very light punishment, just a fine of $1,000 to $2,000. They count this as operational cost. For the prosecution, why can't you effect some cases with heavy penalty to pose a stronger deterrent effect? Because drink driving and drug driving pose hazards to road users. If somebody is killed as a result, if the driver does not have to be imprisoned, I really don't understand. Ms. Law, we've heard members' views. If the DOJ is of the view that there are sufficient justifications to request for a retrial by the court, they'll usually put up such a request. Any follow-up questions? For penalty, if you introduced this penalty system in accordance with the class, the social class or income, it may be controversial. Well, for the rich, if they can afford heavier penalty, then they may breach the law more casually and randomly. And then if we adopt the standard for these offences, should we adopt the same standard for other offences? I think today's report is very clear. Colleagues have already spoken their mind. I hope that you can do your job well. Please keep up your effort. So thank you very much for attending this meeting. Finally, we'll have to handle Mr. Wong Kwok Hing and Mr. Tan Ka-ki's letter. They would like us to establish an ad hoc group to handle or follow up on 7 issues discussed by this panel. Perhaps I should ask Mr. Wong Kwok-hing to briefly introduce his idea to us. Other colleagues can also speak, 2 minutes each. And Mr. Tan Ka-ki then, 2 minutes. Well, colleagues can also express their views. And we can go through the items to be discussed when the group is set up. When the 2013 comprehensive transport study was completed, it's clearly indicated that railway should be the transport backbone. Is that good? Apart from the overall economy of Hong Kong, members of the trade did have a great deal of views. And our colleagues did ask the administration when to have a 4th study. And now they're going to do it after some urge from members. So in September, they will start a study. So this subcommittee should do something. We should be more dedicated to these issues. We can invite organizations in society, those from the transport, trade, professional bodies, or other deputations. Well, 3 subcommittees are queuing up. Maybe by the time we're going to establish one, it's already 2015. As for this panel, this year we worked very hard, but we still have 20 outstanding items in the list. So if this panel is to take them up, then maybe at a meeting we will only spend 1 hour on the comprehensive transport study. That's not sufficient. So we must have a subcommittee. Well, Mr. Chairman, I seldom commend the FTU, but this time I have to do so. I think this is an urgent and important matter for mass transport and the comprehensive transport strategy for Hong Kong. Earlier, the administration has commissioned a railway study. But if policies do not match such efforts, there will be problems. Overall speaking, we must have a population policy, and then we should work on the long-term planning for economic development before we proceed to a comprehensive development strategy for Hong Kong, and then transport development. Among government departments, there's not been much coordination. Now it's quite chaotic. I really regret this. Things are so chaotic these days. So if we can set up a subcommittee on this, we can influence other government departments. Professor Anthony Cheung does not know transport, and Mr. Paul Chan does not know transport. So if we have other individuals and parties who have more knowledge about this, even though we may not be able to make decisions, we can press the government to respond. Then in future, less serious mistakes would be made. Can we jump the queue, Mr. Chairman? We should, as soon as possible, set up the subcommittee and start work in September. Perhaps this will be the greatest contribution of this panel for so many years. So we'd like to have responses on this. Can we trigger this as soon as possible? Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, Professor Anthony Cheung on the 17th, replied to your letter. His attitude was clear there. He said that, as he mentioned earlier in LegCo, the 2020 Railway Development Blueprint would be published near the end of this year. And then there will be a strategic study on the medium and long-term development of public transport, and issues would be looked into in more detail. So the Bureau Director's reaction was positive. They would conduct a more in-depth study into this for medium and long-term development. Therefore, we have asked for a subcommittee, and I'd like to thank Mr. Albert Chan for his support so that we can follow up on the layout for this medium and long-term development strategy. Mr. Frankie Yik, this time the FTU has expressed its concern on these issues. It's a fact that we have to queue up for the establishment of subcommittees. If we are to set up a subcommittee to follow up on these 7 items, then the panel on transport will have nothing to do. Can we, like other panels, convene more meetings to take up these issues? I don't mind having more meetings. As for Mr. Wong Kwok Hing and Mr. Tan Ka-Piu, if they want to focus on 1 or 2 of these issues, then I agree that we should have a subcommittee to take them on. But I think it is a bit excessive to have 7 items on the list. Mr. Gary Fang, first of all, I have to thank the 2 colleagues for their concerns on the 7 issues. We have consensus in this panel that these issues are important. Chairman, you'll recall that at the beginning of this session, when we discussed with the Bureau Director, particularly on the reassessment of the transport strategy, we urged the panel to put this on its agenda. But I really can't forget that 2015 and 2016 will be the last 2 years of this term, and more bills will be introduced into the LegCo. If these 7 issues are important, then indeed we can adjust the agenda of this panel to give them sufficient attention and emphasis. I'm worried that we may lose balance among these issues. Just like what Mr. Frankie Yik said, it's not that we do not emphasize these issues, but will be exhausted. When colleagues come back in October, perhaps we should put these issues in the early part of our agendas for meetings. So if we are to form another subcommittee and we are to have more meetings, we'll be exhausted. We want to attend each and every meeting, but I'm worried about actual operations. So please think about this in more detail, colleagues. Mr. Chairman, transport is important, and we're very much concerned. Upcoming, the Bureau Director is more concerned about the strategy on public transport. Yes, public transport is important in terms of the overall picture. I don't know what his final decision will be. We'll have to await the final report. In terms of transport, there are a lot of issues that are worthy of our time and concern. Just now, some colleagues are worried and concerned about the possibility that with so many issues, there might be problems with division of work. We may be duplicating our own efforts. Well, maybe the subcommittee should be more focused. And yesterday, in the Environmental Affairs Transport, we discussed transport and development as well. For many issues like air quality, it involves transport also. And yesterday we also asked whether pavements are too narrow. Now all these issues are interrelated. So if we are to have a subcommittee, we have to consider all these correlations as well. As the Bureau Director says in his letter, there are also air quality related aspects as well. So if we are to form a subcommittee, we should be more focused. Well, I support it, but it seems that we are casting our net too wide.
Mr. Tan Ka-ki, 1 minute. All right, in response and to sum up, as I said, the transport panel has a lot of issues to deal with. Briefing by the administration on new proposed transport works, and also report to us progress of works. And we have very little time left for dealing with traffic policies. So with a subcommittee, I think we can be more dedicated or focused. The government is planning to do the 4th CTS anyway. I think it is the right timing for us to set up a subcommittee to work with the administration. And the subcommittee will compile a report after completion of work, and will include views of legislators and deputations, and will be useful guidance for the administration in CTS4. So I appeal to members for your support. All right, I will briefly conclude here. Some members said that we have a long outstanding list for this panel, and we haven't got time to deal with all of them. Now, may I explain that our panel is not the only one with a long outstanding item list. There are bound to be items waiting to be discussed. Some of them are time sensitive. They have to wait until the relevant studies or policies are ready before we can discuss them. And for the subcommittee proposed by members, there are 7 items. They cover almost everything that have to be tackled by this panel. It is not just a simple policy or a simple, straightforward social concern. There are things outside the terms of reference of this transport panel, and other panels may have to be involved. One single subcommittee may not be able to address all these issues. And a subcommittee should be set up to deal with only one item, to give it a clearer terms of reference and to be efficient. The subcommittee may, as a result, conflict with this panel in its work. In the past, perhaps there was no major policy issues that had to be dealt with by the panel, and therefore some members felt unsatisfied or dissatisfied. I do agree that if there is a single policy that warrants our input promptly or in a timely manner, then I do agree that we should set up a subcommittee to do that. Right, we have got the administration's response. The report on CTS3, and also the next railway development strategy will be put to this panel. We can then decide whether we should deal with it by this panel or by setting up a special subcommittee. If the subcommittee has to deal with so many policy issues, from my point of view, it is not really appropriate. Still, I will leave the decision to members, because it is not just the chairman's decision as to whether a subcommittee should be set up. All right. Mrs. Regina Ip. I am late, and so I put up my hand late. Mr. Wong Kok and Mr. Tan Ka-ki propose the setting up of a subcommittee. Good. The motive is I don't think we have enough time to do it within 2 years. So I just suggest that the two members narrow down the scope of the proposed subcommittee, because all of them involve many issues, and I don't think we can cope with it within 2 years. So I propose to be pragmatic. Mr. Chen, I think we should set up the subcommittee first and then work on the terms of reference and make a specific proposal to the panel. So we just agree on the broad direction first. There is no need to decide on the terms of reference. And I'd like to know what chance do we have to jump the queue, because we have to tie in with the CTS4. Jumping the queue, then I have first, please give me time to discuss with other members first. The reason why I've read out the reply from Professor Anthony Zheng, well, you haven't read out the whole letter. Well, we can focus on the policy on mass transport. All right. We haven't got the report from the administration on CTS yet. And according to the letter, the administration is not going to conduct CTS4 yet. So if members feel that we need a focused discussion of CTS, let's see how we should proceed. And given that this is the last meeting of the panel in this legislative year, if we want to make such a major decision, it may not be the most appropriate manner. But if members insist on voting on this item, I will put it to the vote so that we can make a decision. So do you feel that we have to make a decision now? Okay. Those who are for setting up the subcommittee first, and to set up subcommittee to deal with CTS3 first, or all 7 items. No, we'll focus on CTS3 first. Those who are in favor, hands up, please. 5. Those who are against? No. I will discuss this at our next panel meeting. Because we can't set it up today, we need the approval of the HC as well. I will leave it to the next. I will leave it to the panel's discussion in the next legislative year. Okay, I will follow up. Meanwhile, we invite the administration to put together some information for us, and so that members have a clear idea of how to follow up, and our secretariat and our research division can also do some preparation work for us, so that we can have a better understanding of the background of some policies. Okay? All right. So we will do some preparation first. If members have no objection, I will proceed in this manner. Since we have no other OB items, I thank you for your valuable input to this panel in the past year. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.